Do you have any memories from before you went to school or started school?
Mostly my memories are, I had abscesses in my ears. I had a lazy eye, so I wore glasses, and I told everybody I had 20/20 vision because that one eye turned out. The abscesses were very painful. I missed a lot of school in the third grade and had to repeat it. They tell about when I was a baby that Dad was walking the floor with me, and I was crying and crying. I was just, 8 or 9 months old. And all of a sudden I just shut up, and they thought I died. And he felt something moist on his shoulder, and one of the abscesses had ruptured and run down on his back and had made a puddle on the floor.
Gross.
So I made my whole life it was going to the doctor, and I was kind of stupid because I was the only one of us three girls that had a little pair of black patent leather shoes, which I absolutely loved. But every time I got my little patent leather shoes on, it was time to go with the doctor, which I was too stupid to realize it because I liked the shoes so much. So then they would drag me up the stairs screaming and kicking because I knew he was going to lance that abscess. And I never remember ever coming back down the stairs. I only remember the trip up the stairs because I went to sleep as soon as they lanced the abscess. But I was too stupid to, be glad they were going to give me some relief. So I remember crying a lot, and I remember my youngest sister, trying to get me to play paper dolls. We had paper dolls and color books a lot back then. This is my memory of my first day of school. I never wanted to be away from my mother. I was, like I said before in earlier ones, I was a crybaby. I cried all the time. I wanted to be with her, and she told me I had to go to school. And if I didn't go to school, they would put them in jail. Well, she walked me to school. We were 3 blocks from the school, Blair School in East Alton. We lived in East Alton Defense Area. And the first recess, first of all, I sat in the class with my fingers in my ears because I said, if they may make me go, but they can't make me learn, because I was a precious child. And so first recess, I went home. I walked home. Mom said, you have to go back to school. I said, but I went. So she took me back to school. And of course, we ate lunch at school. And the first lunch hour, I thought, well, surely I can go home now. So I went home. Mom told me no, I had to go back to school. So she took me back to school. And at the second recess in the afternoon, of course it was time to go home. So I went home. She took me back to school. So school let out. I stood on the damn playground, looked all around. Can I go home now, or do I have to stay here? Everybody was gone from the school. I walked home, and I got to stay home. And the only thing I remember about my first grade teacher is she wore her headscarf upside down. She made like a little triangle, and she wrapped it around her neck with the point sticking out over the top of her hair. My second grade teacher was a rip, and I got on her nerves big time.
Why?
Well, because Dad tried to teach me how to count. So I counted with my fingers, but I ran out of fingers. He told me, well, count your toes. So in class, I took my shoes and socks off and was counting my toes in the classroom. Teacher was furious. And I told her, my dad told me to do that. Well, I think he meant to do it mentally, not physically, but I did it physically. And of course, like I said, I had the abscesses in my ears, so I couldn't hear. And kind of had selective hearing. If I always heard everything late, which I didn't know that term till I heard an adult say it. But she told us to put our books away. And I didn't put mine away right away till I saw everybody putting their books away. Of course, this is my memory and my version. Hard telling what the teacher's version would be. And so I went to put my books away after everybody put theirs away. Well, she got mad and made me come to the front of the class, bend over the desk. She was going to spank me. Well, I had a short dress on, And I wasn't about to bend over that desk and them boys see my underwear. So she just wailed the daylights out of me. I went back to my seat. I got home that night. I told on her. I told Dad. Dad went straight to the school the next day. He had had the principal as a teacher when he was a kid. He climbed the teacher's ass, pardon my French, got all over the teacher and the principal both. Told them not to lay another hand on me. So I went to school the next day, went up to the teacher's desk to ask her a question. She would answer everybody's questions and would not acknowledge that I was alive. The rest of the second grade, the teacher never spoke to me, acknowledged me, answered any questions when I went up to her desk. She just acted like I didn't exist. So the third grade teacher, believe it or not, I was a talker. She would sharpen her pencil really sharp and peck you in the head when you talked. Well, I had to go ahead and say what I was going to say and finish it. So she would be pecking you on the head. I had big scabs all in my head for where she pecked me on the head. But I would finish what I was saying to whoever I was saying it to. So I would go down with her pecking me. And yeah, I'd go ahead and finish what I had to say, you know. Well, I didn't go to her that much because I had 12 abscesses that year and 12 surgeries. Well, they came up with penicillin. And penicillin stopped the abscesses. So my second round in the third grade, I went to Washington School from Blair. And did pretty good in that class, Miss Donahue. But she sent me out in the hall to tell the time, to come back and tell her what time it was. The clock was just outside the room. Big old clock on the wall, but I couldn't tell time. So I stood there and stood there and stood there, not knowing what to do, till the janitor came by and I asked him what time it was, and he said, "There's the clock," and I said, "I know, what time is it?" So he told me, and I went back in. Well, I got in trouble because I'd been gone so long, so I had to stand in the corner because I wasn't about to tell her I couldn't tell time. So I got home that night, hit Dad up. Next day I knew how to tell time from then on. Then in the fourth grade teacher hated my guts, and I hated her guts.
Why do you think these teachers all hated you so much?
Because I was a mean kid and they had no power over me whatsoever. I cared not what they thought. I didn't care to learn, and they were just not important to me. Mom and Dad were my authority figures, and they were just people I had to tolerate or Mom and Dad went to jail. So the fourth grade teacher, I spent every story hour in the cloakroom for talking or whatever I did. I would have been on Ritalin this day and age. I'm sure that it drugged me out. And every Friday, as far as I remember, I got a whipping from this teacher every Friday for talking, missing spelling words or something. But I got a spanking, and it got so boring that I would forget I was getting a spanking and think, oh shit, I gotta cry or she ain't never gonna quit. Well, Miss Bunt was the fifth grade teacher who had to witness my whippings. That was according to the law. So, Mom asked Miss James about sending me going to summer school so Ronnie and I wouldn't be in the same class. Because we were in the same class and nobody picked on Ronnie. That's half the reason I was in trouble all the time. So she sent me to St. Louis to this, what Mom and Dad thought was a summer school, to see about summer school. What it was to be psychoanalyzed, which we didn't know this when I went. So first of all, me and Dad were there, and some girl was on her dad's lap slapping the crap out of her dad, which amazed me and Dad. Then they put me in a room with a whole bunch of stuff. Nobody told me I could play with them, so I didn't bother them. Then I went in with a guy with ink blots, and I made up the most fantastic things I could think of for the ink blots, not knowing I was being checked to see if I was nuts. Then they showed me all these pictures of, like, the only one I can really remember is the sun was on one side and the shadow was on the same side as the sun. and I picked out the problems in them. Well, he wanted to ask my dad why I was there, and he said for a summer school. And he said, well, your daughter's well above average intelligence, and she doesn't need to be here. Well, that was Miss James, because she thought I was a nut. Miss Bunt was my teacher the next year. She treated me like a queen. I would have died for that woman. I made the best grades I ever made in my life. We moved to Rosewood Heights, where she lived, and I rode back to school with her till finish out the year instead of going to Roxana in the 5th grade. I went back to college. I went back to school in '89 when I turned 49. I went back to college to keep my youngest daughter in school because she wouldn't go. So I just went back to school and got my associate degree. And when I went to Sangamon for my bachelor's degree in Springfield, one of the teachers suggested if we had a teacher that meant a lot to us, we should let that teacher know. Well, Miss Bunt was my 5th grade teacher who I adored, and I had Mr. DeShannon, who was a high school teacher, my bookkeeping teacher. And so I said, Miss Bunt I knew was dead and gone because she was a real old lady then. So I got a hold of Mr. DeShannon and talked to his wife, and he wasn't home at that time, but I told her about Miss Bunt, and she said there was a teacher's record. She would look for Miss Bunt. Well, sure enough, when I called back to talk to Mr. DeShannon to tell him how much he had meant to me, which I'll tell about some other time, and they had found Miss Bunt. She lived in Wood River, and she was like in her 80s. So I was in, you know, she had to be in her 20s when I thought she was an old lady. And I called her and I said, you probably don't remember me. I'm Jeannie Roberts. And she said, I most certainly do. You had a sister Suzanne and a sister Veronica. And I said, yes, that's right. And I told her how much she meant to me. And she changed my life. That's why I treat mean-ass kids, pardon my French again, I treat them good. Because I know there's more anger there than anything else. And she taught me to be good to a kid. You can get more out of them than getting meaner and stricter to them. Because the meaner people got to me, the meaner I got to them. And I punished them. You know, what did I care what they did to me? But I couldn't handle how good she was to me. I would have died for the woman. And Mr. DeShannon was in my junior class. I went through high school and I was good in algebra. So they moved me half of the year to a better class. And I didn't want to be there. So I never did another thing. Well, in my junior year, I got to thinking, well, I'm going to graduate with a half a credit too much, and there's no sense in that. It's a waste. So halfway through my bookkeeping class, which I was very good at, I just quit and never did another thing. Well, the teacher asked me what I was doing, and I said, I don't need this half a credit. I'll have enough to graduate. He said, no, you need a full credit in either algebra or bookkeeping. So he stayed after school with me and a bunch of kids that couldn't get it till we got this set of books done. I had to do them in 3 weeks when a half a year it took to do them. I worked my butt off, finally got it to balance. He had a daughter in the hospital. He still came in after he went and visited his daughter to deal with us losers. And then when I got the set of books done, he made me follow him out the school with my set of books, which I was going to keep forever. And I said, where are we going? He said, you'll see. And he made me walk all the way across the football field because he knew I could have done it. I just didn't do it. And there was a big bonfire. I said, no, I want to keep these. I've worked so hard on this. He goes, no, we use the same set of books every year. Throw it on the fire. So I had to throw my set of books on the fire. I missed my class trip that year and everything, but the teacher pulled me through, and he didn't have to do that. He could have let me just go downhill you know, I was my own worst enemy, and
What
he,
what happened when you called and talked to him?
I just told him how much I appreciated it. I'm not sure he remembered me. You know, I just, I put, you know, I probably shouldn't even tell this. To be funny, you know how you put a tack in a teacher's chair?
Mm-hmm.
One of those big spike things you put papers on, I sat in his chair.
Oh, good job, Mom.
Horrible. To this day, I can't hardly stand it. And I thought he would see it and think it was funny. Well, he acted like he didn't see it, or he didn't see it. And I walked in to sit down in that chair. The whole class hit their feet, hollered at him. Because I think he thought the guilty party would stand up, which I was in the back. I was so dumbfounded I would have never stood up. You know, if he'd have sat on that, to this day, I'm horrified. In the home ec room, a brand new desk, I sat with a pencil and drew a picture of a woman in a formal, made a heart, and wrote Jeannie Roberts plus Glenn Johns, carved through the varnish in the desk. And then when I got done, I thought, oh my gosh, what did I do, you know? Well, halfway through the day, that home ec teacher wanted to see me in her office. I knew I was screwed. You know, what could I do? I did it, and, you know, I put my name on it. So I went in the home ec room, and I said, Miss Graves, I hear you want to talk to me. And she goes, yes, I did, but the more I thought about it, if you had done that, you wouldn't have been stupid enough to put your own name. And I said, not hardly, and turned around and left.
Way to own up to it, Mom.
Way to own up to it. I was that moral type of child.
That's good.